A new day dawns and the wild horses of Central Australia faced a challenge of survival in a harsh environment. The wild horses of Central Australia travel vast distances between food and water. Only a few waterholes exist, and the wild horses must have water to survive. In the vicinity of waterholes, food in the form of pasture is soon eaten out. The nearest pastures may be many miles away, so wild horses undertake a mini migration every few days. Harsh as this seems, wild horses survive and breed successfully every year. Foals are born in midsummer, and hours after birth must accompany their mothers and the rest of the band on long treks from water to pasture. Any foal born too weak, or with legs and hooves unsound, is unable to keep up and will be lost from the band. A mare with its newborn foal is fiercely protective and will keep the foal sire and any other stallion well away from her offspring. Wild horses exist in bands consisting of 2 to 3 females, usually sisters or cousins, along with their foals. Within each band is an older, dominant mare, bred, born and raised in the desert. She is a decision maker. In her memory are the road maps to the waterholes and pastures. Bands led by these wise old mares survive the inevitable droughts of Central Australia. 1 or 2 stallions are always present, alert to danger, forever on the lookout for rival males. Young colts living in their own bachelor herds are forever in the background, eager to challenge the alpha stallion for a chance to take over and breed the mares and sire their own foals. The band stallion, however, doesn't give up his breeding status without a fight. Whatever the outcome, the band survives, coping with the daily struggle to find sufficient food and water and raise their young and to breed again. Wild horses can double their population every 3 years, even here in the Central Australian desert. For these are the desert Brumbies, living on the edge of survival in surely one of the most hostile environments that a horse could find itself in. They are feral to Australia, descendants of horses left here by chance when horsepower was superseded by the arrival of the internal combustion engine. Made redundant, stallions and mares were released, and some escaped, into the wilderness to fend for themselves. They now exist in outback Australia wherever there is room to roam and sufficient food and water to survive. What is a desert Brumby? What qualifications are required? Can any horse become a desert Brumby? What are the events in the daily diary of a desert Brumby? How do their hooves cope with the terrain over which they must travel? What is the nature of the terrain? Exactly how far do they travel? What is their food and water? These were the questions that Brian Hampson and I, of the Australian Brumby Research Unit, set out to answer with a research project lasting 3.5 years. The study site was adjacent to the Wataka National Park, famous for its Kings Canyon in the heart of Central Australia. From 1885 to 1993, the area was a cattle station called Tempe Downs. However, to the indigenous Yukaka people, it was always Orimbini, their traditional land. And in 1993, by an Act of Parliament, they became the owners of their land once more. The study site is dominated by the Giles Range. The Ernest Giles Road runs parallel to this range, To the south of the road is a vast expanse of rolling red sand dunes, supporting spinifex and native grasses and trees such as mulga and desert she oak. On the northern side of the Giles Range is Peterman Pound, a wilderness amphitheatre 8 kilometres in diameter, no longer frequented by people. The pound is waterless. The Peterman Valley leads out of Peterman Pound, running parallel to the northern edge of the Giles Range. On the floor of the valley are the telltale signs of Brumbies, trails made by the hooves of horses travelling up and down the valley. Decades of use by hundreds of horses have cut deep into the surface of the valley floor. Horses young and old, large and small, have left their footprints in the dust. To document the traffic using the trails, Brian positions game tracking cameras beside the trails.
We use this to get live video footage of horses as they come past, so it's movement censored. We've got the movement sensor down the bottom, and I've got it set so it'll take 30 seconds of footage of horses coming past, and 30 seconds should be enough to go from the first to the last horse in that band. It works at night, so we've got infrared light source, works during the night and the day. So we've got this camera set up here to take shots across the backs of the horses, up at the height of the wither as they move up and down the track here, and then we've got another camera set up underneath the log up there, down at the level of the foot, so we can watch how the foot moves over the ground.
The results tell us, day and night, many animals are using the trails, but not just horses. Where are these horses going, and where are they coming from? Horses will die if kept from water more than 4 to 5 days. The horses using the trails must be travelling to water. But where? This is the Peterman Valley, and it was part of the Tempe Downs cattle station. The remains of cattle yards can still be found on the valley floor. Presumably water must have been available for the cattle herds, but there are no windmills or bores, so perhaps the Brumbies are using a forgotten spring. The source of water had to be found. Perhaps the Ukaka people knew of a spring in the Peterman Valley. We consulted the Ukaka elders, Philemon and Raymond, and they agreed to show us a spring that never failed, a sacred place created by the rainbow serpent that only Ukaka men could visit. On the map it is named Farrer Spring. Brumby trails converged at the entrance to the spring. The men soon spotted horses approaching the spring, and the horses drank thirstily. Could these really be the horses grazing on the distant sand country, 20, 30 or even 50 kilometres away? I've climbed a cliff top overlooking the plains over which the wild horses have to travel. You can see their tracks across the land. From this point they've got 7 kilometres to go before they reach those hills in the distance where some grass grows. They've already travelled 7 kilometres from Farrer Springs, where they would have got water, to this point. So 2 to 3 times a week, every week of their lives, every week, every month, every year, little foals, yearlings, adults, mares, stallions, pregnant mares, all have to make this journey. It's an inevitable consequence of life for wild horses in this desert. To answer this question, we fitted GPS satellite tracking collars to horses coming to the spring.
These collars will take a position speed reading every 3 minutes for at least the next 3 months. And they've also got a VHF radio transmitter on them to make it a little bit easier
to find the mares when we want to get them back in 3 months' time.
The collars carried onboard data loggers that, when downloaded, told us exactly where the horses had been travelling and at what time.
So 1mm of M99.
And that's enough to knock down a horse.
That's enough to knock down a horse within about 5 minutes of the horse being darted intramuscularly.
Brian loads a dart with the powerful opioid drug M99. Just 0.7 of a mil is sufficient to immobilise a 400 kilogram horse within minutes.
Loaded 27th of the 7th.
When the dart hits the target, a charge within the dart explodes and injects the drug deep into the muscle. Soon the effects of the drug are felt and the horse becomes disoriented, walking away stiff-legged before falling on its side. The team quickly ages the horse and examines the feet.
Okay, so it's a very low heel, short wall, very short toe. The wall's rolled all the way around, particularly at the heel. The heel's very narrow. The frog really just seems to be part of the sole. It's as hard as a rock.
The GPS collar is activated and the VHF transmitter is checked. The immobilising drug is reversed with an intravenous injection of the antidote, M5050. Within 60 seconds, our horse is back on its feet and rejoins the band. The fading VHF signals tell us the horse is heading off into the wilderness. The collared horses could be anywhere in hundreds of square kilometres of desert or on the other side of mountain ranges. However, the VHF beacon is powerful enough to be picked up from the air, and Brian crisscrosses the country in a helicopter searching for the collared horses. The black mare was recaptured and thousands of data points of GPS data were superimposed on a Google Earth map of the study area. Here is the study area again. This is the Giles Range, the corner, the Peterman Valley ending in the dry Peterman Pound. Here is the Ernest Giles Road. Here is Farrar Spring, the only water in the dry Peterman Valley system. We had seen horses leaving Farrar Spring after drinking. Some headed east, and some travelled west, and some disappeared into the north. But it wasn't until we attached a GPS collar to the black mare that we discovered just how far Brumbies roamed in search of food. The data points stored in the GPS collar of the black mare are superimposed on the Google Earth map of the study area. Our black mare started at Farrar Spring on day 1 and crossed the valley floor. She climbed a small range and grazed in this area for a day, and then, moving along, averaging 20.5 kilometres a day, she climbed and crossed a rocky range up onto a plateau, and then entered a high valley, grazing as she went. By now she had covered 55 kilometres since her last drink at Farrer Spring, 3.5 days earlier. Now she quickly retraced her steps and crossed the Peterman Valley floor to Farrer Spring at the end of day 4. She repeated this round trip twice and clocked up a total of 156 kilometres, nearly 100 miles, during the 7.5 days that the collar was active on just 2 drinks of water. Completing journeys like this is routine for a desert Brumby like the black mare. She can do it because her ever-growing hooves are tough and hard. The walls of the hooves are straight and without flares. The heels are short and the frog is thick and hard. The toe is beveled in front. The entire perimeter of the hoof wall is beveled. The hoof appears to have been sculptured by its interaction with the environment. These are the horse trails that the Brumbies are using as they move from Farrer Springs all the way to their feeding grounds, 14 odd kilometres away. You can see their footprints here in their manure. But what's really interesting is this rock that's sticking out. You can see these sharp edges here that never get touched by the horse's hoof. Is rounded and smooth, and there's a mark here where a hoof will have struck. This means two things. Not only has the rock been rounded and smooth, but the horse's hooves have too. So the hooves are striking these rocks, coming this way, that way, at every angle, and getting a trim. A trim with virtually every footstep, because this is hard as well. And this is the gift that evolution has given the horse, a hoof, an ever-growing hoof that can accommodate this wear and tear and yet stay hard and tough and allow horses to make these incredible journeys every day of their lives. This structure, the horse's foot, has been the key to the survival of the black mare and her offspring. If it had failed, and had she become lame and unable to travel, she and her foal would have died. The tough hoof capsule protects the sensitive structures inside and, as if armour-plated, enables desert Brumbies to reach virtually every nook and cranny of their environment in search of food. Like mountain goats, they climb rocky escarpments, seeking out every last blade of grass. It's almost impossible to believe that a horse could get up from the plains and climb these cliffs virtually to the top of the plateau, because clearly they have done. Here is some horse manure, and they're seeking out portions of food that must still be dry looking, must still be nutritious enough for them to find it important enough to make a journey. Of course, these are the desert Brumbies. Wild horses occur in other parts of Australia and have very different lifestyles and feet to match. In central Queensland there is pasture everywhere and water is close at hand, an easy life compared to the desert Brumby. The feet of these horses are long and cracked with flared walls, still functional for their easy lifestyle, but quite different from their desert cousins. Have the geographically separated populations of Brumbies become genetically distinct? Within 30 to 35 generations, could evolution by natural selection have already produced the unique foot of the desert Brumby? Or is the foot we see shaped by the lifestyle and environment of the desert Brumby, and an example of what any horse's foot is capable of? To see if this is true, we set up an experiment. We captured Brumbies living in the soft, sandy country of central Queensland and tamed them ready for a long overland trip to central Australia. The hypothesis was that the long-walled, cracked and flared sandy foot would be transformed into a desert foot by life in the hard country. But first we had to catch and break in some Brumbies. This big, strong, wild, skewbald mare we named Christine. Born and bred at Babelora Station near the Carnarvon Gorge in central Queensland, Brian uses his horsemanship skills to quieten her. Another successful capture, Brian.
Yeah, well, this is the second mare that we've caught today. She's a 10-year-old paint mare. She had a 8-month-old foal with her, who we've released. He's with another group of mares now, but he's certainly weaning age. And this mare was darted about an hour and a half ago. For the last hour, I've done a bit of work with her on the ground, blindfolded, and then
So
let
an
her up.
hour and a half ago she was a wild Brumby.
That's right, exactly right, yep. She's probably been close to the road, so she would have seen cars, she would have seen people before, but never been touched. So for the last half hour I've just been working her with her tied to a tree, and I felt confident that she wasn't going to break away, so I've let her off and just starting to work on leading her. I've bagged her right down and I've got her to the point now where I can just move and she'll follow me without any tension on the halter.
When told she was going to travel 3,000 kilometres to Alice Springs, she was initially not very enthusiastic. Christine was soon recaptured and encouraged to make the trip to the desert.
Get your mind back on me. Good girl, well done. Back, back, good, well done. Back, 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 well done.
These were the wild Brumbies that we captured at Babelora just 2 days ago. So 48 hours ago they were wild horses, and now they're on their way to Central Australia to show us what their hooves can do when exposed to a different environment. They come from sandy country and they're going to go to a hard surface. 3,000 kilometres later, Christine is led into the desert. We hoped she would be accepted into a band of desert Brumbies that would lead her to food and water and help her navigate in her new environment. Christine is tied to a tree at the entrance to Farrer Spring. Brian is above her in the tree to monitor progress and, if necessary, defend her from attack. A stallion leads his small band to water and encounters Christine. The encounter seems to go well, and we decide to release Christine into the company of this stallion and his small band. When last seen, they were heading east for the pastures in the sand dune country. 3 months later, Christine is found, alone, not far from where she was released. She has lost weight, and life in the desert has been tough for Christine. It is essential she is recaptured, not only to download the valuable information in her collar, but to rehabilitate her back to Queensland. Where has Christine been for the last 3 months? How far has she travelled? We need our computers to discover this, but that will have to wait. In the meantime, the experiment has been a success. And we captured her in the sandy country of central Queensland, Babalora, and her feet have been transformed from the long, cracked, sandy foot into this wonderful, hard, sculptured desert foot. Christine now has desert feet. The long, flared walls have disappeared. Her feet have been transformed into the short, hard, tough foot of the desert. Christine recovers and is led home, to live in Queensland on Brian's property near Brisbane, to feed on green grass for the rest of her days. We decide to reward her pioneering spirit and endurance, for she has helped us unlock the secret of the desert Brumby. Chris and Brian download the GPS data and superimpose Christine's travels on the Google Earth map of the study area. Christine was unloaded from the trailer at this point beside the Ernest Giles Road. Brian then led her into the study area and released her at Farrer Spring. Initially she stayed close to the water, travelling away for 1 or 2 days and then returning to drink. One day she travelled northeast, taking the route of the Black Mare into the same rocky valleys and plateau, and was away from water an extraordinary 7 days. Later she left Farrer Spring again, travelling east, around the corner, grazing parallel to the Giles Range. Then she crossed the road and headed far out into the sand dune country, where she grazed for 2 days, and then in a wide loop she returned to Farrer Spring. This trip of about 150 kilometres took her 3 days, and she never attempted anything like it again. She wore the GPS collar for 116 days and travelled 1,002.4 kilometres, averaging 8.6 kilometres per day. Can any horse become a desert Brumby? Christine succeeded for 3 months, but only just. It nearly killed her. The winter rains had been poor, and the prospect of her surviving the upcoming dry, hot summer were not good. What is a desert Brumby? They are horses born and bred in the Peterman Valley with a culture of survival. The trails leading to food and water are imprinted in their memories. Christine had no such roadmap, and it was only by following the others that she was able to survive. This and her intelligence and will to survive. With the data recovered from the GPS tracking collars, we discovered that they travelled great distances over hard, rocky, sometimes mountainous terrain. Desert Brumbies have excellent conformation. From the first day of their lives, their legs are straight and strong, neither turned in nor turned out. The hooves are short-walled, hard and tough, and serve them well. They exercise constantly, and their hooves are trimmed and modelled with every step they take. Their existence in the desert is fragile, as the pasture on which they depend is easily damaged by the hard hooves of non-native introduced animals like horses and cattle. National Parks Ranger Chris Howard explains.
I guess with the soil disturbance here as a result of the hoof impacts, you've even got the double whammy on the more persistent species like the woolly butt, where over time those roots have just been exposed and they too will fail as a result of exposure to the elements. So even the more persistent species in time will certainly perish, that's for sure. So you've really got quite an interesting contrast, an ungrazed area here versus that side of the fence where you've got none of your spring flowering occurring yet on what's a fairly heavily grazed patch of countryside. Well, I guess at the end of the day, if we want Australia to end up being fairly pristine and as it should be here, then we need to remove the feral animal species. Let's have a look at the horses and the camels and the likes, and really need to manage those hard hoof species so that this soft, fragile surface here doesn't end up in a trash state like we've got here. I think this would be the key point. Take a bit more care of what we've got.
Life is tough for a desert Brumby, and drought kills many a horse that cannot reach the permanent water holes. However, the desert is sparsely populated by people, and the desert Brumbies will survive in the red heart of Australia wherever there is sufficient food and water and the freedom to roam.